All right, so no new numbers out of Alberta, and I haven't seen numbers out of any of the other provinces, so I'm not going to really talk about that. But the one thing I do want to bring up again, um, the city of Toronto, and I know there's other cities, but I'm just using Toronto because it's the biggest city in Canada, so it's a good sample size, I guess, in that they've had these mandatory mask laws for since the 7th, so they've had it for almost 3 weeks now. And if these mask laws actually help, Ontario's numbers should be going down already. Like they should have been going down for about a week now. But they haven't really been from what I've seen so far. But again, if they're not down like at least a good amount over the next, I mean, going into next week, then it's beyond safe to say that the masks have nothing to do with preventing the spread. And again, we're forcing people to do it for no apparent reason. Now, um, the reality is that they will have a slight impact, but it will not be very big because again, wearing a mask if you're healthy and not sick makes no sense. There's no scientific evidence to back that up as being a good idea. And if you're sick, it's a good idea. But again, that's pretty much the the gist of that. But as far as the numbers out of the states go, again, their cases they're still pretty high. Um, they were down slightly yesterday, but the death numbers were back down at 900 yesterday, so that's pretty good. They have been up over the last few days or so, so that's very good. But again, the numbers out of the states, they're still not something that people need to be overly concerned about. I think that the increase in cases is almost exclusively due to the increase in testing, and with a slight impact um, coming from the protests and all this garbage that's going on right now. So again, that's pretty much exclusively what's causing the increase, if you ask me. And I think the numbers, I think the data really backs that up, in that they've been testing a lot more people. Like although this is something that's been going on for like a month now, or even over a month, so it's pretty much the same. Like again, the states is testing over a 500,000 people a day, I believe. So again, that's again, I heard you know, that like hundreds of people are testing positive every hour, but again, they're um, they're testing on like a 500,000 people a day. So that's pretty much what's causing the increase in numbers. And again, um, still no hospitals that have been overwhelmed. Again, you constantly hear people fear mongering about, oh, hospitals are near being at capacity. But again, um, the private hospitals almost always are run near at capacity, because you don't want to have empty beds because you're losing money having them, right? So they're almost always at capacity. At least that's what I've heard. Public, ones are going to be a little bit different in that, again, there's no profit incentive, at least kind of, but in a different way. So again, that's just something that, again, that people are kind of over estimating. And in New York, they never had to use those extra. I mean, I think they used the ship one a little bit, but they never had to use the emergency field ones that they set up anywhere, even in New York. So again, it's very unlikely that the hospitals are actually going to be overwhelmed. So again, the thing I wanted to bring up today is talking a little bit about hydroxychloroquine. Now again, it's something that people have been talking about for months now, and it first rose to fame or controversy, whatever you want to call. I mean, there really isn't a controversy behind it, but the only reason there is because Trump talked about it. Now again, a lot of the people that are, I mean, number one, there's a very large percentage of people that, again, if Trump says something, it must be bad. Trump says, breathing oxygen, good for you. And people, oh, no, that's not good for you. You don't need to breathe oxygen. What are you talking about? Trump says you need to drink water to survive. And what are you talking about? You don't need to drink water. Again, so it's just how insane these people are. It exists to some degree on the other side, but it's not nearly the same. And then it's not nearly the same in that now you have literal, tons of psychologists literally reporting people having, Trump anxiety disorder, that never existed before. And the other thing too with Trump is that when you try and get definitive examples out of people, what they don't like about him and reasons why, it's almost entirely anecdotal, emotional garbage, like almost entirely, right? Like you can't. They never point out one thing that's actually tangible that you can point towards. That he's. I mean, I can. Like that's the other thing too about these people is that they're the most anti-Trump people that exist. Be it I can argue against Trump better than they can. It just goes to show that they have no idea what they're talking about, and they literally live in the definition of echo chambers. Like the definition of echo chambers is how these kind of people live. But the thing with hydroxychloroquine is that it's been used for decades. I've taken this drug before for, obviously not for the virus, but for a different thing. And again, I don't remember any side effects. I do remember something I didn't like about it, but it has nothing to do with its effects. Um, and that it I don't understand. It's been, like I say, it's been used for decades, and you can prescribe it off label in the States with no issues. And now all of a sudden, in most of Canada, I don't think you're allowed to use it, and it's absolutely insane. Like it's absolutely insane that that's where we're at. That we have a drug that objectively would have saved lives. The debate is how many lives, and the problem is that why are we accepting that too? And again, this is just where people are at too. That again, they'll always make the with the mask argument. Oh, if it can just save one life, but again, they never make that argument with anything else. So again, that's a terrible argument. But why not with hydroxychloroquine? There's literally no downside to it whatsoever. There is downsides to wearing masks, tons of downsides to wearing masks. Again, so it just goes to show just how insane these people are. And again, this is a literal epidemiologist again too. They always try and cite, oh, you don't have all the experts disagree with you, even though most of the experts have been wrong this entire time. They're the same experts that grossly overstated the amount of cases and deaths. They're the same experts that told us not to wear masks, that are the same experts that now want to force us to wear masks. They're the same experts that, there's so much stuff they got wrong, it's not even funny. I mean, in Canada, we had the borders don't work. Now we have people who, if you have an American license plate, people are, slashing your tires and, wanting to beat you up if you're caught in Canada. So again, it's very funny, just how much things change, and not to mention how ignorant people are to not even realize something that they believed, 2-3 months ago. Now they all of a sudden believe the exact opposite of it. So again, it's just beyond insane. This is from Sean Hannity. It's something kind of funny here. AOC says evictions are about power. Suspend all mortgage payments in the U.S. Now, again, they're just people they literally have 5-year-old levels of thinking, like literal 5-year-old levels of thinking. In that, I mean, for starters, I mean, what happens if you suspend all mortgage payments? Well, guess what? You're going to have to bail out the banks. What happens when you bail out the banks? Again, the rich get richer. So again, this is why I don't trust these people. They have no credibility whatsoever. Because if they did, they wouldn't support policies that contradict other policies. Again, they're vehemently anti, corporate cronyism and the rich getting richer unjustly, but yet they support policies that do that. They support policies that do that. So again, it's just absolutely insane how stupid you can be too. And it just comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of how society really works, in that you can't just give everything away for free, because then how do you determine cost of anything? How does anybody make any money? Well, again, what happens in these kind of socialist, and when you go more towards communist countries, is, there's the small group of elites. Again, this is the other thing about how socialism is a complete and utter lie, in that all socialism does is just hollow out the middle class. In that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and that, socialism basically exists so that, if you're in the middle class, you either become you have a small chance of becoming very rich, or you end up as poor as the average poor person. Because again, The left believes that everybody should have to run as slow as the slowest runner. It's not equality. It's not true equality, and that everybody starts in the same position. The left believes, and AOC and these kind of people believe, and again, there's no debate on that, because if they did, they wouldn't believe what they did. In that they believe that everybody should have to finish at the same time, which means you're going to have to massively cut down and disenfranchise certain groups of people. You're going to have to tax them in insane amounts just to make them finish with the same amount as the person who doesn't want to work. Like, of course you're going to have to do that. So again, it's just insane. This is from Liberty Hangout on Twitter, and they say, "Welcome to Twitter, where it's okay to be a pedophile, a communist, or a terrorist, but it's not okay to be white, Christian, or conservative." Yeah, and that's pretty much where Twitter is at. I mean, they allow terrorist groups, they allow terrorists. I'm rather sure they allow pedophiles. I mean, I constantly see some of these people that are pedophiles. Let's just be honest. I mean, they definitely allow communists. I mean, Antifa's all over the place. But again, if you point out, if you say stuff that, it's okay to be white, if you're a Christian, if you're a conservative, they will, I mean, in a lot of cases, outright ban you, or most of the time at the very least, they will shadow ban you, they will downrank you. And again, they're very open and honest about this. Project Veritas has caught them multiple times admitting to this kind of stuff. So again, it really boggles my mind how people can still think it's a conspiracy theory that social media outlets are biased when they literally have admitted to it on camera multiple times. Now again, people make the whole Project Veritas selectively edits, but again, they're literally 9-0, I think, on lawsuits. So again, if they were selectively editing, they would be losing lawsuits. So again, that's a terrible argument because it's clearly and patently false. So again, like, we're at the point where, again, like, people can um, people can hold a view that the view literally is contradicted by the people who have the view, who are most empowered to decide whether or not that view is true or not. They can literally tell you to your face that you are wrong, but yet people still won't believe it. Like, that's where we're at in society nowadays. I mean, it's the same thing with socialism too. Like, you know, hundreds of millions of people dying in the name of communism and or socialism still to this day, but yet look at how many people out there like want that system. Like, look at how many people want that system. So again, it's insane. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is from Spencer Fernando, and he says Canada's judges are moving the country in a far left direction that Canadians never voted for. No, the first thing I would point towards is I really don't care what people vote for. We're at the point where people will vote for anything. Like, I think that looking back in history, especially this point in time in history, um, it will boggle people's minds that we had a system to where everybody voted, like everybody could vote. For the simple reason, not that it's a bad system in theory, but the problem again is people are naturally corruptible in that, and politicians obviously are the same. And politicians can, like I've mentioned a million times, again, they can elected but being like, hey, we're actually gonna do the right thing. We're gonna, grit our teeth and be in for the long haul. Or we can have the other one be like, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of free stuff. And again, who is the average person going to choose? It's going to be the free stuff person. So again, that's the problem. And eventually you run out of free stuff, and because people are so used to getting free stuff, they have no idea how to make it on their own in the real world. And when reality kicks in, again, things are going to get really ugly. And I think that's going to be something that will go down in history, and that is that people will be absolutely shocked that we literally allowed everybody to vote, regardless of where they're at in society. Um, and at the very least, there should be some sort of a test, or I think another way of putting it is, I mean, number one, governments shouldn't be allowed to run deficits. They shouldn't be allowed to run deficits. And number two, you shouldn't be allowed to vote if you're not actually contributing to the system. Like, it's literally the equivalent of, like, I mean, it is the equivalent of, like, um, having, like, allowing a group of people to vote whether or not you take money from the rich guy. Like, of course they're going to take money from the rich guy. And not people say, oh, you should do it to help the poor. But no, the reality is that if you take all the money from the rich guy, all the money, you're going to run out of the money, and eventually you're going to be used to taking that money to survive. Um, and eventually, again, there's going to be nothing left, and it's the classic, don't feed the animals at the zoo scenario because they come dependent. Again, it's the same thing that how we run society nowadays. So anyway, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things, check me out on Twitter, Parlay, and BitChute if you haven't done that already. Make sure you check those links out as well.